In the heart of the great thicket, Capcut sat behind a desk made of petrified red tape. He was a fox who found more joy in a well-organized filing cabinet than in a fresh hen. To him, the world was not made of trees and rivers, but of categories and subclauses. One morning, with a flourish of his fountain pen, he declared the Pochatur Bonjongo pause. Travel from 75 neighboring jungles was frozen instantly. He called it administrative streamlining, but the sparrows knew better. They whispered that the fox was being Pochatur, half Pocha for the rot of his logic and half Chatur for his cunning greed. At the edge of the border, the Horeen deer stood frozen. They were travelers, migrants, and dreamers, now caught in the glare of invisible headlights. They were told they were in administrative processing. It was a place that wasn't a place, a state of being where tomorrow never quite arrived. They groomed their fur and checked their watches, waiting for visas that Capcut had tucked into a drawer he had conveniently lost the key to. The fog of the jungle rolled in, thick as ink, swallowing their hooves. Above the mist, the Chorui sparrows flitted through the branches, their chirps serving as a biting commentary track for the unfolding stagnation. "Look at the clever rotten fox," one twittered. "He's turned the forest into a waiting room without any chairs." They played with the word Pochatur, tossing it back and forth like a bitter berry. To the sparrows, the fox's decree wasn't a rule. It was a performance of power where the only prize was the silence of the woods. The Bolad Legal Union Oxmiti did not appreciate the silence. They were the oxen of the law, and they moved with a heavy, rhythmic trudge. They arrived at the High Court, dragging 4.7 metric tons of paperwork in a cart that groaned under the weight of whereas and heretofore. Their necks were thick with the effort of carrying the law, their eyes bloodshot from reading fine print by firefly light. They demanded an audience with the highest authority, for the pause was an affront to the very gravity they lived by. Judge Shajaru sat upon his high bench, his quills vibrating with a sharp, orderly energy. He was a porcupine who believed in distance, both social and legal. To get too close to the judge was to be pricked by a painful truth. He looked down at the mountain of paperwork provided by the oxen and sighed a sound like dry leaves rustling. He despised the Pochatur rule not because it was cruel, but because it was messy. It replaced the sharp edge of individual judgment with the blunt instrument of a label. "The rule is vacated," Judge Shajaru declared, his voice echoing through the hollow logs of the court. He pointed a sharp quill at the oxen. "A forest cannot be governed by a blanket of fog. Every deer has a name, and every path has a purpose. Capcut's pause is a fiction without a finish line." The Bolad oxen let out a rumbling low of triumph. The law had spoken. The gates, technically, were no longer barred. The paperwork was, for a fleeting moment, weightless. Bukbak the heron didn't wait for the ink to dry. She took to the air, her long legs trailing like streamers. She was the jungle's news gatherer, a creature who could turn a simple yes into a 37-sentence epic of sensationalism. The gates are open. The pause is pulverized. The fox is foiled, she shrieked, her voice cracking with the strain of her own volume. She flew over the Horeen, throwing down leaflets that fluttered like white birds. The world was saved, or so she shouted to anyone who would listen. The Horeen deer heard the heron's cry and felt the phantom weight of the pause lift from their shoulders. They gathered their belongings and marched toward the great gate, their hearts beating with the rhythm of movement. They saw the golden sunlight hitting the path ahead. They were no longer administrative subjects. They were travelers again. They reached the gate, expecting it to swing wide on its rusted hinges, welcoming them into the 75 jungles of the world. But at the gate sat Kasim. He was a tortoise of the old guard, a government worker who had seen dynasties rise and fall without ever speeding up his heart rate. He sat on a small, embroidered cushion, his eyes half closed. The Horeen pleaded with him. "The judge has ruled. The heron has announced it. Open the gate, Kasim." The tortoise didn't even blink. He simply pointed to an empty tray on his desk. "I have heard the noise," Kasim said slowly, "but I have not received the implementation instructions. Without the memo, there is no movement." As the sun began to set, Capcut appeared behind Kasim, carrying a small pot of tea. He looked at the frustrated deer and the exhausted oxen, then smiled at the tortoise. The fox hadn't lost. He had simply moved the pause from the court of law to the desk of the doer. The judge could rule, and the heron could scream. But as long as Kasim waited for a memo that the fox would never write, the world remained perfectly, administratively still. The Pochatur rot was complete.